if you're not making mistakes, you ain't trying hard enough.
Do people misconceive smart to be this like futuristic, Terminator style robots?
Their needs and their requirements, and they are not aligned.
How do you know that the decisions you're making now are for the good of the future of the business for the next 5-10 years?
How do you know?
Take the buzzword away from it. What does it mean?
All that proactivity, we need to be able to measure its success.
Do you get kickback on privacy?
That's a challenge, taking that data and turning it into something that is digestible.
Was it still a bit of a, oh shit, we're going to, I'm 41, this has to work?
I had a decision to make.
How do you get to a point where you can objectively say, here's the success of smart within your building?
From a space cost perspective in central London, it's about £10,000 a desk.
Jesus. What role does AI play in what we're talking about?
All buildings had to be C or over efficiency by 2028. But if you weren't achieving those efficiency ratings by the dates, it was £150,000 fine a year for every instance.
Oh my goodness.
80% fails band B. And it's so mental, it's almost unbelievable. From E to B, that's almost sort of knock it down and start again.
In relation to smart buildings, what is the next big leap?
I think
Welcome to the Future Workplace Podcast. Now, the idea behind the podcast is we ask the underlying question, which is this. If you have an office move over the next 12 to 18 months and you don't know what you don't know, what questions do you need to be asking yourself in terms of deploying an office which is fit for purpose for the next 5 to 10 years? Now, that encompasses everything in terms of physical real estate, from technology to furniture to partitions and everything else in between. Now, what we then do is we bring experts onto the show to discuss their area of expertise so that you can have all the questions to your answers centralized on our podcast. Now, all we ask in return is that you like, subscribe, click the notification bell, because every time you do that, we grow our audience. It gives us expertise. It gives us ability to bring more experts on, and ultimately gives us the ability to answer the questions that you have. So, speaking of experts, I'm delighted to be joined by Jonathan Foote, managing partner of Chromas. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to our office. Welcome to our podcast studio. The ever-improving podcast studio. Delighted to welcome you, and thanks for coming in, and thanks for the trek. I know it's a bit of a journey for you.
There's a little bit, but it's absolutely fine. All works.
Good. I've made a quick intro there in terms of what we try to achieve with the podcast. Now, managing partner of Chromas, but what I want to try and do is just unpack Chromas, how you got to the position where you are at the moment, and just kind of give me a run up to Chromas. And then what we'll do is look at Chromas and kind of where you fit within this real estate puzzle that there is. So shall we unpack it? Give me a bit of a brief background as to you as a person.
To me, okay. Should I say this?
You can say whatever you want.
I'm 51, and I've been doing this for 30 something stupid years. Started, did an apprenticeship in electronics, and then became a service engineer in an AV business, that was the beginnings of my foray into AV and technology specifically. And kind of worked my way, sort of, I suppose you could describe, through the ranks, from service, through engineering, through project management, into sales, and then from sales into consultancy. And when it came to starting Chromas, which was 10 years ago, almost now, it was one of those moments in life, right, where, the stars aligned, the crossroads, whatever, where I'd got to a position in my career, I sort of effectively lost my job, and I had a decision to make.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to run my own business, and I felt arrogantly, but obviously correctly, that I knew everything.
Clearly, 10 years in.
Well, exactly. Hasn't been proved otherwise yet. And the kids were the right age, and the mortgage was the right size, and it was like, okay, it's time to do this.
Yeah.
And put my money where my mouth is. I actually set out to do something ever so slightly different, having done consultancy for sort of 3 or 4 years prior to starting Chromas. But I got drawn back.
Right.
People, came to me, which was very flattering, asking, can you do this for us? Can you do that for us? So I sort of ended up going back to consultancy, and it sort of grew from there, really.
It's crazy, isn't it? And you're 41.
That's what I said. Yeah.
So
yeah, 51.
you were 41,
I was
so
then.
10 years in. But is that a bit of a, you mentioned that the kids are the right age, the mortgage is the right level. Was it still a bit of a, oh shit, we're going to, I'm 41, this has to work.
Yeah. And I remember being like 6 months in.
Yeah.
And I'd rung everybody I knew to ring. And pressed every doorbell I could think to press.
Yeah.
It was a real, I don't know where to go next.
Yeah.
But then a couple of things happened. I ended up doing an exhibition, which in hindsight was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
But I do remember at the time, discussions with my more than better half was, don't do it. But I ended up doing it anyway.
Really?
Which, I'm not sure. I still haven't been forgiven for.
Does she know you did it? She does now.
Yeah, no, she does. She does. But actually, it gave me the sort of the kick up the backside that I needed, and gave me some impetus. I think I was probably running out. You run out of energy.
Yeah.
It's only sometimes you can kick doors. So, and that just opened a chink, and off we went from there.
Yeah, you got a break.
Yeah, got a break.
Oh,
yeah, and it was a good break. I cannot count my blessings enough, really, for that break.
Yeah.
But then I think everybody probably has those moments.
Yeah.
Something happens, and that was, you look back and go, well, that was the moment.
That was the bit.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And obviously, I was 7 years in now, so we're kind of.
But was it similar for you?
Similar. I've spoken about this on the pod before, actually. I didn't have children. Like you, I'd always wanted to start my own business. I did my MBA when I was still in the military, so I got that kind of military processy mindset where everything has to fit, all the processes have to be followed, and that was kind of the mindset that I took from the military. I did the MBA, and then we spotted a gap in the market, Spenno and I was relatively well paid sales guy at a large integration company,
right,
and had some good accounts. And a similar conversation, I sat down with my then girlfriend, now wife, and I said, how long is the lead here? Can you cover the mortgage for a bit? And she went, you've got my full backing.
Oh, nice.
So there was no children. So it's similar, but there was no pressures on children. The pressure was on her.
Dependence makes sense.
Covering the mortgage, which she did. So
which is what it's all about anyway.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So, but I've, and it's been an interesting 10 years. And there's been great times and there's been tougher times.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it.
And what was the vision? So when you went out, and clearly the break might have changed the vision slightly. You said people were coming to you, which might have changed things. But what was the vision when you?
Well, when people started coming to me, I realised that actually, my reputation, thankfully, and the market is so strong around tech consultancy that's what I need to focus on.
Yeah.
Why try and create a new market for yourself?
Where
this is already there. But you can't just carry on being another consultant. You've got to make yourself different, right? And there's between you and me and anybody else who watches this, I always had hankerings of being a teacher. That's what I wanted. My father was.
Yeah.
He didn't actively encourage me being a teacher. In fact, he actually discouraged me being a teacher. But those sort of hankerings have always sort of been there. It's about people, and it is the wins you get from educating somebody, and when they get it, and when it makes a positive difference to their life. So for me, technology is, hey, listen, it is what it is, and it can do a lot for people.
Yeah.
But it fundamentally is about the people and what the tech can do for them.
Yeah.
So the vision for Chrome was right from the very beginning, that if you were to draw we always called it the bicycle wheel.
Yeah.
Always came across a slightly wonky bicycle.
Yeah.
But it ought to be like the sports car alloy wheel of Chromas, with this hub at the centre is people.
Yeah.
People and technology, and then every specialism that encompasses those, where tech can improve humans' lives. That's the ultimate aim. And it all sounds very idealistic, but it is genuinely.
It's true. I mean, in doing this podcast, we've been doing this for maybe 6 months or so, some exceptional guests on this thing, and every conversation almost to a T is people. So we're talking about furniture, we're talking about lighting, we're talking about technology, and all of them are saying, don't worry about any of that.
Just focus on the people.
Focus on the people.
Yeah, and absolutely it, because ultimately, what's the point otherwise?
Yeah.
And also from a podcast perspective, right? We're interested in human beings, interested in other human beings.
Yeah.
So, it makes a lot of sense. So it had to be with people at the centre. And if you take that attitude as we have, when it comes to consultancy, you boil that right down to its bare bones and its basics, it takes you back to people.
Yeah.
So we have a fundamental process that we go through every single time we do our consultancy, which is, and it gets talked a lot about nowadays, it is requirement gathering.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally with requirement gathering, you're going back and you're asking the business whys. And it's the why, just keep asking why until you can't ask why anymore.
Yeah.
Now, we can do it as consultants. Harder when you're an integrator, right?
Yeah.
Because at that point, the client probably knows, oh, look, I know I want some technology.
Yeah.
And then you do talk about, obviously, what you're trying to achieve in the space. But for us, we have the luxury, and frankly, it's the fun bit, of going back and saying why. And we do it with an element of risk, right? Because we could, and we're prepared to conclude for a client that you don't need technology.
Yeah.
You need to do something in a different way.
Yeah.
So on the basis we get paid for our time and our expertise, and we make nothing out of the client buying technology, well, then we're in a fine position to do that.
Yeah.
So taking that attitude is so refreshing, and you learn so much about your client. And every project we have done, without exception, is 100% success, because as you go back to into the requirements and you ask the whys, right back to the very basics of, why do you even have a business doing what you do? Why do you therefore, I don't know, need a space like this? So those real core whys. Once we've done our consultancy piece and the technology has been delivered, you can then take them back to those requirements and tick your way down them. If you can't, if one of those you can't, well, then we've screwed up.
Yeah.
As consultants. But it holds us accountable. And it's a lovely conversation to have with clients, because I think it makes them feel like they can trust us.
Yeah.
Because we're laying ourselves bare.
And you're also challenging thought, right? So if they're going, well, we need a boardroom. Okay, why? What I love about this is, and you don't know this, but we've got an internal policy of why. And basically, we mess up a project, or even if we do well, right? We've our internal policy is 5 whys, and all we do is we go back 5 whys. Why did we get to that situation? Well, this happened. Why did that happen? Well, this happened. Why did that happen? And we go back 5 times, and then at that number 5 point, we then make a process change decision based on that point, not based on the end result. So it's funny that you mentioned your whys, because I'm like, we've got the same thing internally.
Why is a fantastic question.
Yeah. I'm waiting for my kids. My kids are 2 in January. I'm waiting for the why stage from my children. Why?
Yeah, there is a moment in life where that becomes, the answer then becomes, why not?
Yeah.
You shouldn't say that to your children. Yeah. But I do remember deploying that several times with mine.
Yeah.
Mine are a little old.
Yeah, 2 twins, crazy.
Oh wow!
Your people thing runs within the nucleus of Chromas, and your tagline is people-led technology consultancy. Yeah. What does that mean?
It is probably majoritively what we just talked about in terms of if you can't justify your need for technology through your requirements, which fundamentally come back to your business, and a business is made up of people. Mm-hmm. Then why are you deploying the technology? So fundamentally, it's the requirements of the people lead the technology. So, and it's a little play on words, isn't it? People-led technology consultancy. Well, we're also people, right? We're consultants. Yeah. So a very subtle, if not slightly naff play on words, but fundamentally the double meaning is there.
Yeah.
And so for us, the core is, taking it back to the why. And this is really important when you start talking about smart.
Yeah.
It really comes into its own.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll dive in.
That's a great segue, because my next point is to talk about that. Now, look, I'm going to play Mr. Naive on the other side of the table here, but the word smart buildings has been bashed around forever, right? What does it, take the buzzword away from it. What does it mean?
I get asked it all the time.
Yeah.
And there is no short answer. What you have to do is almost push the question away, because fundamentally the definition of smart building is that's where the issue arises, because it focuses on the technology. If you go right back in a sort of slightly patronizing kind of way, but if you with a client and go, okay, so, and COVID was a real highlight on this. I don't wish to mention COVID particularly, but other than the fact that it questions people's need for a building. So if I can run a business without a building, I save a hell of a lot of money, and everybody gets to work at home, so they're happy, right? Mm-hmm. So the reality is we have learned that people aren't happy all the time working at home, and it causes all sorts of issues around mental health. It does also around team
cohesion.
That'll do.
Yeah.
And some organizations will claim that sort of the heart of the business, the ethos of the business gets lost because these are just a bunch of individuals sort of working on teams. That's as close as it gets to being a business, right? So there is, and I saw some stats the other day around with the current projection by 2030 it will be a full return to the office. I don't actually believe that will happen.
Yeah.
Because I think Pandora's box has been opened in terms of people can work at home and people do want to work at home. So there'll always be an element of resistance to that. But I think probably what it'll do, it'll go back to what it was before COVID, which was the washing machine repairman's coming round. I need to work at home today.
Yeah.
Maybe plus a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that little bit will ever go because that's what occurred during COVID. So if you take the fundamental principle, though, that you need a building for your people, it's not a smart building. It's a people building.
Yeah.
So with that underlying baseline, that's your starting point to answer the question, what's a smart building?
Smart building?
Now, the other side of that equation is, as I already mentioned, that a business doesn't really want a building because it's a massive overhead.
Yeah.
And one of the basis businesses are there fundamentally to make money, and a building costs you a huge amount. Ideally, I wouldn't have one.
Mm-hmm.
But because you've got to have one, you've got the building and the business on one side of the equation, and then you've got the people on the other side of the equation. Now, the smart in smart building is the tech that links the two. You've got their needs and their requirements, and they are not aligned.
Yeah.
But smart helps align them.
Right.
So if you can take yourself back to that fundamental basis, then you start to understand what a smart building is.
Yeah.
And clearly, it's not just one thing, it's multiple things.
Yeah.
But taking it back to, then we go through the people-led requirement process, and we start asking the business, okay, well, you tell us you want a smart building, but let's start talking about why you want a smart building. And the reasons are many and varied.
Right.
So it could be the revenue savings from energy. Okay, well, let's be honest, BMS has been doing that for years.
Yes.
So, okay, energy saving, that's one way. What else could it be? It could be space saving. So if we don't have to have a desk for every bottom, and we can exercise our hot desking policies, then we can save on space. And when you're talking, and this data is a little old now, but from a space cost perspective in central London, it's about £10,000 a desk.
Jesus. Just from management of...
Just the space, the services that go with having an individual in the business. So it's all the amenities and then obviously the restaurants and all the other costs around that. And then all the heating and utilities and everything that go with that. Mm. So, 100 desks saving space. Yeah. Well, then that's a massive saving immediately.
Yeah.
So it could be that. It could be that we like the credentials of having a smart building. We like to talk about the fact we have a smart building. It might be the green credentials.
I was going to ask about sustainability, and it's a big play, isn't it?
It is a big one, and there are businesses out there who very genuinely believe in BREEAM and similar, and their desire to make their impact on the planet less. There is also another side to that, which of course is where you save in energy.
Yeah.
You also save in money.
Yeah.
So there are definite benefits to that. But if that is the reason, then fundamentally where we're heading with all of this is, look, somebody within the organisation has got to sponsor this principle of wanting a smart building. So let's establish why you want it. And we've already talked about the people and the building itself. So if we can establish why you want that smart building, then we can identify who, probably at sea level, is going to sponsor this. And it could be as fundamental as, well, actually, whatever we do with our building, we would make sure it works for our people as well as our business. So really, we just want to be able to talk about the fact that we've got a smart building.
Yes.
And it's the sort of the marketing value in that. And I go, okay, that's fine. But that being the case, then maybe marketing are going to have to step up and contribute to this. Because whatever you do with a smart building, smart has a cost to it. And we see a lot of smart buildings fail. And when I say fail, I mean they never come into inception.
Yeah.
And that is for a few reasons, but probably the majority reason is as a construction project continues, the technology piece, you'll know this, AV is one of the last things to go in.
Yeah.
Now, AV is probably being relatively well protected because it's sort of meeting room and special space focused. And that meeting room count typically doesn't change or the special space. So AV as a technology, pretty much that cost, that spend is protected and understood why it needs to be there. When you get towards an end of the project and your contingencies have been eroded away and money's starting to get tight, people go, now look, we've got this line on the budget that's smart. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Nobody's a sponsor.
Yeah.
So nobody can stand up and go, we're doing this because.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows why they're doing it anyway.
Here's our bicycle wheel.
Well, quite. Why? Yeah, exactly. Give me the reasons we're doing it. And if there's no fundamental reasons behind it or no hard facts that if we do this, we will save this, it gets knocked down.
Yeah. You can see that. It happens with AV. When we, maybe not to the extent,
a lesser extent,
but it does happen with AV where they go, oh, actually, budget's a bit tight. We'll just turn that.
Last in isn't great, right?
Oh man, it drives me crazy. It's my biggest.
So many levels.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like you, our biggest advocate for a meeting room is the client, is the people. So if the big thing I bang my head against the wall on is don't bring us in last, because the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to walk into that meeting room, the audio is not going to work because we're in a glass bowl, and there's going to be complaints on day one. Anyway, I can go off on a tangent on this. On that
we can have a variety about that, I would imagine.
So what about misconceptions then when it comes to smart? So we've spoken about smart buildings for ages. You mentioned BMS just a few minutes ago, where it's, that's kind of been doing that stuff forever. But do people misconceive smart to be this like futuristic, Terminator style robots that everything's automated? Is that a misconception that people have, and is it just a bit simpler than that?
Well, if I to answer your question, I'll ask another one instead. You said to me earlier, what is a smart building?
Yeah.
And when you've gone through that sort of logical process that we talked about, going back to the requirements and working your way through that way, the answer is, well, a smart building is what you need it to be, and that's the answer to a business, right? And if that means a Wi-Fi connected coffee machine because it reduces the queues at the coffee point, because that company of 10 people need to be able to order their coffee when they can see there's no one in there, and it pops out. Fine, that's a smart building.
Yeah.
But the other end of the scale is everything that smart could possibly do.
Yeah.
Right through from having an app on your phone and being able to book your desk and book your parking space, and charging and everything that goes with it. We'll talk through some of that. But so I think the issue fundamentally is this phrase, a smart building, where nobody really understands what it means. And it can be really, really simple, but it also can be incredibly complex.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it has to come back to why are we even doing this?
Well, it's the people thing again, isn't it?
It is
the people thing and then the bridge between the two.
Yeah. So when you boil, if you have the pleasure of doing that process and taking a business all the way through, and if the numbers stack up in terms of ultimately a business needs smart to pay for itself in whatever way it's going to do it. As I mentioned earlier, there's space saving, energy saving, marketing, kudos, or the value in the marketing. I once again lost my train of thought. It's a 51-year-old issue. That's what this is. Once you've gone through all of that, where was I going with that?
You're not about the people. We're talking about it can be Terminator style apps and all the rest of it, but actually if it's something small, then it can be something small.
That's where I was going. Right, thank you. So let me go back. So once you've gone through that whole process of establishing why you need a smart building, and if the scale is there, then it really comes down to enabling the technology with its users, so with the people who populate the building.
Yeah. And
we've talked about how you work out what a smart building looks like for a particular client, which, I have to mention, might not be a smart building. As a consultant, we are in a position to go, don't need a smart building. You want to, it's just not going to work for you. Then you've then got to make the smart building a success. Now, the success of a smart building can be measured in multiple ways, including its savings, as we mentioned previously, but also it's how you impart and how you communicate the value of the smart building to the people who work in that office. So, a smart building can be doing so many things that people aren't aware of, be that through energy saving or through air quality or through room availability or through enabling or disabling floors based on the number of people anticipated to be in the building at any one time. if you don't communicate the benefits of that to the wider organisation, then you are the value of it very quickly gets eroded because it's
it becomes that thing where it's like, that's just the way we do it.
Well, yeah, people just end up turning up to the office and doing their job every day, which is how it always was in their old building, which wasn't smart. So, where do I see this as a user of this building? And don't forget, C-levels are users, just like the guy who works in the mailroom is a user. So ultimately, it's enabling folks to be able to access the data that comes out the back of a smart building and presenting it in a way that shows how the building is performing for them.
And I'm a big fan of data. I like my head. The way that my head works is very like, show me the logic, So, and I think data is one of those things. I mean, we've got CRMs and all sorts of stuff, and it's one of those things. We have this rightly or wrongly, shit in, shit out saying.
Yeah.
How do we know the right stuff to look at? And I think that's the question I've got really is, if you've got a stakeholder, you've got a sponsor at C-level and you've got a bunch of other people that are involved in it, and then potentially the contingency starts getting used later down the line, the project starts getting signed off. At the end of all said and done, project completed, how do you get to a point where you can objectively say, here's the success of smart within your building? Without two scenarios. One, shit in, shit out. Reading the wrong data. We used a football scenario before we start recording, didn't we? How do you ensure that you understand that XG is an important data set, or isn't it? So that's the metaphor for what I'm trying to say. Or alternatively, how do you ensure that you're getting enough data to be able to make objective-based decisions on the space that you've got? So I think I made sense with that question.
You made sense, absolutely. If you haven't done your bit at the beginning, you're not going to know what you're looking for as the outcome. So, and if you don't know what it is you're looking for, you don't know what to measure. And the two are clearly intrinsically linked, right? So one of the, as I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest savings out of a smart building is if you have hot desking. The principle is if you've got 3 desks for every 5 people, as an example, then in principle you should be able to save 2/5 of your real estate. Right? It doesn't necessarily quite work out like that, but that's the fundamental. So being able to measure the number of people fundamentally who come into the office, and also therefore measure your desk occupancy and meeting room occupancy, gives you an idea as to whether you've got this right or not, just as a baseline. Are people even coming in? There's more to that though. So if you decide actually you're not going to necessarily do a hot desking policy, I am going to have a desk for everybody, because there are on the I'm sure you've heard the twat days.
Yes, right? Of course, yeah. Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday.
Indeed, although everybody's in. So therefore I have to have a desk for everybody. But if through the application of technology, through instilling a culture within the business that you're going to tell the business what you're going to do, at least a number of days before you go in, otherwise I'm not in the office on Monday or whatever it may be, then it gives the business the ability to turn off areas, zones, or even entire floors. Now, the data out the back of that, in terms of not only the facts of who came in and therefore are we turning the floor, if the other floors are overpopulated, clearly turning that floor off was a misnomer, we shouldn't have done it. But also, therefore, the savings that come out the back of turning that floor off. And you have to be able to manage it.
Yeah.
So that really is, I mentioned BMS earlier, and BMS have been around for an awfully long time doing an excellent job. But fundamentally, BMS is reactive. And smart, in its best way, is proactive. So where you are asking your users to proactively tell me what you're going to do, and we can then proactively enable floors, enable areas, turn heating and cooling on in meeting rooms because we know it's booked. We'll turn it half an hour beforehand, and we can improve the air quality. All that proactivity, we need to be able to measure its success. So to answer your question in a very long way, you've got to know what you're measuring in order to make sure that your data is good on the output. And then if you are presenting the data not only to your Cs to measure, but also to the rest of the business to see how things are going, then clearly you've got to then present it in the right way. And that's a challenge, taking that data and turning it into something that is digestible. Digestible at the right levels. Somebody who is at maybe CFO level who wants to look at some real hard facts is going to want the information presented in a different way to Sandra from accounts, who just wants to know that she's sitting in the warm area.
Have I hit my line item?
Because Sandra from accounts suffers from chilblains, and she needs the warm area of the office, as opposed to sitting there. So people need different facts presented in different ways.
Yeah.
So that is in itself a challenge, but that is probably, and I'm going to segue into something I think you might ask me, which is where AI comes in.
Yes, I do want to go into that, but not yet. AI is a mad one, isn't it? But I do want to go into that. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the podcast so far. I'm just going to take a quick 30 seconds of your time to explain to you one of the biggest problems that people have when it comes to fitting out their new office space. And that problem is they get AV in too late. When you get AV in too late, what happens is they treat it as an afterthought. They treat it as a bolt-on. It's a few screens on a wall. Let's just put some screens on and make it work. Massive, massive, massive mistake. And we see it day in, day out, where people treat AV as an afterthought. To try and avoid that mistake, you need to bring AV and the design of AV in really early as you possibly can. Now, to try and help you with that, we've put together what we call an AV bundle. It's a bundle. The link is in the description below, and it gives you the ability to configure your own AV meeting room so you know what solution you're putting in the rooms. It gives you a risk map for the project so you know when to bring AV in, and it gives you a budget calculator so that you can budget AV in early as opposed to later when you realize that AV, frankly, isn't as cheap as what everybody thinks. So grab the bundle below, get AV in as early as you possibly can, and avoid the mistakes that lots of our clients actually do when it comes to refitting their offices. The question that springs to mind when you're talking about this stuff and measuring people coming to the office, we stuck a post out on LinkedIn the other day. One of my sales guys stuck a post out on LinkedIn about the new Microsoft updates that are coming and the fact that it can measure whether you're in the office and whether you're, it basically just links into your Wi-Fi, your corporate network, and it measures whether you're in the office or whether you're at home. One of my sales guys stuck a LinkedIn post the other day, and this thing blew up because people were complaining about privacy and about, you're jumping on my private life and all this kind of stuff. I've got my own opinions on that particular matter as an employer.
So do I.
But the question sprung to mind when you were talking about measuring people coming into the office and how do you know when someone's in the office? Do you get kickback on privacy and on intruding on somebody's private time, although it's not private because you're on company time? Do you get
yeah there are quite rightly concerns about privacy, and I say quite rightly because we've got to be careful. Measuring people, who they are, what they're doing is all fine until that information gets used in an inappropriate way. So therefore gathering it has to be done very carefully. And you can take data, but you can do it in a less invasive way. You can recognize the fact that there are people in a room, but not who they are. You can now, of course, recognize who they are in spaces. Through even video conferencing.
Face recognition and stuff like that.
And the UC platforms will do that for you. There's a number of them will. So, it can be done. I think you have to beg the question, why? This goes back to our...
There's a theme here, right?
Yeah. Why do I need to know that it's Jeff from HR sitting in a meeting room? I don't, based on the reasons we're doing this. As long as you put in... You've asked all your whys appropriately. You will. I mean, we've never not concluded that I don't need to know who they are. But I do need to know the number of people in a room, and various devices will do it in a number of different ways. You can, with a reasonable level of degree, you can map people using Wi-Fi and their devices clearly with their permission. And there's always pushback. You can then have heat map generated devices and then also, obviously, we talked about those devices. I keep pointing at them all over there, but
they can't see that. The cameras off.
Exactly. Yeah. How do you not know what I'm talking about?
Exactly.
And also when it comes to desk bookings, then there are sensors to go onto desks to just sense a presence. Not necessarily knowing. So when you take somebody on a journey and explain to them, and I think this is probably a mantra for life. If you explain to somebody what you're doing, why you're doing it, people's defenses come down. People's fear and immediate reactions are based on ignorance. And it's not their fault.
And they cover their own story, right? So if they don't know, if you're not having the communication, they fill the gap with their own story. And that's when you get these vicious rumors and you're like,
exactly.
Where the hell did that come from?
Absolutely. So lay it out and evidence it. And then people are generally, okay. That's right. You'll always get some pushback. But the vast majority, when you explain why and what it is you're trying to do, are fine about it. But you're quite right in terms of, once upon a time people used to clock in and out. So why shouldn't the business know whether you're in the building or not?
Man, I've got my own opinion. I mean, polarizing. Look, the point of this podcast is that we're honest and transparent, right? I as an employer, I do sit there and I go, you're on my time.
Yeah.
So, yes, we have a flexible working policy. Yes, but you're still on my time.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's trust first, right?
Yeah.
You've got to trust your guys, trust your team to do what you're asking them to do. And at the end of the day, if the job's getting done, then great.
Yeah, exactly. Where do people get it wrong? This smart building thing. And I'm thinking specifically, I don't know whether this is related or not, I don't know, but the first thing that springs to mind is the HSBC moved to St. Paul's, and now I'm hearing they've taken more space back again at Canary Wharf.
Right.
I don't know the relationship, if it's related to this kind of smart building mapping thing or anything like that, but in my mind, I'm sat there going, you've moved to St. Paul's because you've obviously got a policy around downsizing, and now you've taken more space in Canary Wharf again. Where do they get it wrong? Where does it?
I might contentiously suggest they haven't got it wrong,
right?
And the fact that things change.
Yeah.
So, and these projects last such a long time, and we're hearing about HSBC's move, which we've heard that about in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But they'd have been considering that for multiple years before that, and some of the biggest project we were involved in was 20 years in its inception, from the moment that the plot of land was built to the moment it was open, to 20 years.
Jesus.
Now, that's probably an extreme version, but the point is that and things change over time, right? Political leadership will change, which means economies change, which means that you can't stick to a plan just because that's what we said we do.
Yeah.
You've got to be prepared to flex it based on what's happening now. So I don't know, obviously, is the answer, but I don't necessarily think that HSBC necessarily did get it wrong.
Yeah.
Just that things have changed.
Yeah. I want to talk about AI. Now, I am very naive to AI. We spoke about this on the phone the other day. Smart buildings, we've got a good grasp of it and all the rest of it. But, AI, outside of ChatGPT, I am like, my mind gets blown by this stuff. What role does AI play in what we're talking about? We're trying to build a space for the next 5 to 10 years. I don't even know if we know the answer to this yet, but what role does AI play in this conversation?
I will preface this with, I am no expert, either, right? And I'd like to say that in terms of technological specialisms, it's not on our website.
Yeah,
it's not on the list, right?
Yeah.
But it's ultimately, as ever, it's the applications of the technology. For us and for Smart, we talked about the data. We talked about what the data looks like and making sure you've got the right data. AI for us in Smart is about being able to analyze that data, but using language that average Joe uses.
Yeah.
So it's being able to use the language model and to ask it questions that you want answers to.
Yeah.
So it really is the best tool in that way for analyzing the data you've got. I talked earlier, didn't I, about presenting the data in a way that means something to everybody, which of course is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And these dashboards that you're trying to present to the working team versus the C-level versus the finance team versus HR versus everybody wants to see different information.
Yeah.
I should preface that with actually nobody wants to see information because they don't know they can see it. But once you present it to them, they all want it shown in a different way. That's where AI comes in.
Yeah.
Because it will help you model that data in a way that makes sense to the individuals.
And I'm assuming you can set triggers and stuff for things like, if the room has this occupancy and it's 28 degrees outside, then a trigger can be set to be able to put the air conditioning on, which is all, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, if you take that example, that's that, and not wishing to besmirch what you've just said, but that's what BMS has been doing for years. Yeah. That's reactive. It's too hot in here, turn the aircon on.
Yeah.
What Smart does is it says that meeting room, the first one is that meeting room is for 6 people and you've invited 8 people to the meeting.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll move you to an 8-person meeting room.
Yeah.
Or we'll inform the facilities guys that you need moving, and then they can manage that process. But also that room, the airflow is set to cater for for a full house.
Yeah.
There's 8 people in an 8-person meeting room. Therefore, we know we need to exchange the air a certain amount of time to achieve the oxygen levels, and then monitoring that. So the monitoring bit after the fact that's what BMS does every day of the week and is very good at it. It's the reactive or the proactive bit, that knowing what that population of the room is supposed to be, and then measuring what it is thereafter. That's the Smart bit.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject. Have you got any case studies? Anything that springs to mind where you can, within the realms of what you can share, where a success?
So, we have a particular client who has taken, they're really taken the bit between their teeth,
Right.
and what they're doing with their information is astonishing, really. This sort of imagination that they've had. So, some examples I think that you wouldn't necessarily have presumed. So we talk about being able to shut off floors, and therefore there's no heating and lighting costs associated with those floors. But if the floors aren't being used, you also don't need to clean those floors.
True.
And it goes right down to individual desks. If that desk hasn't been sat at for a week, then we won't send a cleaner to go and wipe it down. If the whole floor hasn't been used, then we can reduce people, even down to like wiping door handles, because at the end of the day, cleaning is a huge effort at some cost that goes on that nobody ever sees because it's always done, late in the evening or early in the morning. But if you can prevent the need from having to do it, well, then there's yet another cost.
Or doing it. So I saw one, which is, sorry to jump on your case study there, but I saw one which was sensors outside of toilets, and it would trigger after a certain amount of footprint went into the toilet, it would trigger the cleaner to go around to go and have it clean and disinfect everything.
Which is great. That's for the general population, and making sure that everything is clean and as where it's that is that's fundamental. If you look at it from the business's perspective, and sorry to keep bringing this back to money, but it's about businesses. Ultimately, if we can save money by analysing what's going on, well, that's got to be a win, right? It's another justification for having a smart building. So I think probably in terms of case studies, they're some of the sort of outlying, the bits that we sort of found particularly interesting. And we also present those to our clients then in terms of, well, look, this is the sort of level you can go to. Once you've established your whys, this is the sort of level you can go to in terms of making use of the technology that you've got in there and maximising.
Who ultimately owns it? There are loads of stakeholders involved in this whole thing, which is, to be honest, the reason we put the podcast together anyway, because there's so many different stakeholders. Who owns it?
Honestly, it varies.
Yeah.
It does, and it varies. It comes down to the individuals in the management of the business. It's about where the passion is and where ultimately, if you can filter it down to where the core driver is, be that financial or people or credentials or whatever it might be, then they are typically the owner. But there is more. Sometimes there are exceptions to that, where you get members of management who are particularly passionate about this, who have a particular bond with the people. Typical, maybe CEOs, and where they're very happy to espouse the value that this brings, and ultimately they're the ones, as you say, sponsor. And when we talk about sponsoring, not only talking about it in terms of talking about it in positive terms, but also defending it as well. And well, hang on, no, this is what this brings for us.
This is the point of it.
Exactly. This is why we're making this investment. And also questioning the investment, right? Look, I've stood up and said, this is what we're going to do, but actually it's not delivering it for.
And do you drive that then as part of your role at Chrome? As there's the consultancy side of things where you're looking at the front end and making sure they're making the decisions based on your whys and the bicycle wheel and all that kind of stuff. Do you then go on 6 months later, 12 months later, 18 months later and go, here's the objective data from your investment and all of this?
You have to, but for multiple reasons, really. First, you've got to enable a client to be able to measure the success of this. And this success is going to be measured over 5-10 years. But also, just from our perspective, it's our way of proving we did what we did right. And you are only, always measured by your last project, right? So you've got to be able to, it's got to be good, and it's got to be proven as being good, but also you've got to know it's good so that you can talk about it as a success. But really, that's just the bonus to us. Fundamentally, you've got to work with a client and continue to make sure they are measuring the data in the right way, presenting it the right way to make sure that their investment continues to be a success. And as we mentioned earlier about HSBC, things change. Yeah,
you're right. I just used that because it sprung to mind as I was asking the question. But it is one of those which is like, how do you? I suppose this is kind of a prelude to my next question. Really, is like, how do you know that the decisions that you're making now? This is a difficult question to answer, by the way. But how do you know that the decisions you're making now are for the good of the future of the business for the next 5-10 years?
How do you know? I don't think you can. No, which is possibly not the answer you were looking for.
Well, I'm thinking like fads, right? beanbags and bloody football tables and slides in cafeterias.
Showing your age,
You know?
Just saying.
So, like, we're making a large investment in a new. We're moving to an office building. Stick a slide in a cafeteria. It'll be fun, and no one uses it. I'm being slightly polarizing, right? But how do you know that the slide? How do you identify that the slide's a bad idea before you get there? Take that as a metaphor to the building that I'm talking about.
So maybe I can come back on that with not an answer.
Yeah. Are you dodging me, John?
No, actually. Maybe I am. No, actually, I don't believe I am. So there is a principle. Like everything I've talked about is going back to the whys and sort of basing things on the facts of the situation, right? And making sure you've got sponsors and making sure everything is measurable to justify what you're doing. But sometimes in life, you just need to do things because it feels like the right thing to do. So I heard a phrase the other day. I'm not going to get it right, but the general principle was from a particular. I would probably attribute it to Branson, but I'm not sure if it was. Who basically said, if you're not making mistakes, you ain't trying hard enough. The principle being that in his organisation, where he was trying to grow it aggressively and doing things so very differently, he wanted people to try stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're playing it safe by just sticking within the facts as you know them and it's all measured and that's what we're going to have, it's all going to be, it's all going to be tickety-boo, we know it's going to work, then you're not trying hard enough. You're not looking at things differently and challenging the status quo. So whilst a business, when it comes to money, is wanting to invest in something that they know is going to be right for them, sometimes you never know all the facts.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have to take a punt. Now, I would argue that from a consultancy perspective, everything we do from that beginning moment of engaging is out there to make sure that with the best of the knowledge we have right now, it will be a success because we've based it on what we know now. But as I mentioned more times now than I care to remember, and it's probably fair, things change.
Yeah.
And businesses shrink and businesses grow and the requirements that sit behind it change. And these projects are not short.
No, and I think that's a fair comment. You know, next week, Rachel Reeves has got another announcement coming out, which is going to be on that big screen out there, and we're keeping a close eye on that. But that's going to change things. People might be in the middle of a project, PC it, January or whatever, and then all of a sudden Rachel comes out with some stink bomb, and everybody shits themselves. But things do change.
Things do change. I think probably one of the things that's changed, actually, nice little segue I've done there. You'll thank me for that. And one of the things that I haven't really talked about too much, and that is the BREEAM and the green credentials related to smart, and some of the legislation that has been put in place, but is sort of now changing slightly. So you'll have heard of MEES, MEES.
I haven't.
And the acronym for which I can't remember now. We'll have to look that up.
Okay.
And we'll neatly edit
add that in there, Scott.
In the edit. We'll just flash that up on the screen so that we had it all organised beforehand. But ultimately, it's the evaluation of the efficiency of a building. Just like at home, when you sell your house, you have an efficiency rating for your house that goes with the seller's pack, right? Then landlords have to have certain efficiencies for their buildings. And this is this MEES measure. And it's the standard A to F efficiency chart. And some of the targets, and the changes that some of the targets have been loosened a little bit, but have varied slightly. So it was originally that all buildings had to be C or over efficiency by 2025, I think it was, and that has now moved out to 2028.
Right.
And by 2030, buildings have to be at least B.
Whose responsibility? Landlord or tenant?
Landlord.
Interesting.
So now they're relaxing that slightly, and there's been some issues around policing it. The policing of it falls to the local government, and they don't necessarily have the resource to do it. But in principle, if they could, then the fines that certainly were in place, I'm not aware of them changing, were extensive. So for a landlord, if you weren't achieving those efficiency ratings by the dates, it was £150,000 fine a year for every instance.
Oh my goodness!
If you've got 2 tenants in your building, that's 2 instances.
Yeah,
so that's £300,000 a year. So madness, right? But the scary bit that goes with it, and there is context for this, obviously, because Smart can help contribute to this. Although its contribution is there, it fundamentally you're going to have to get your construction wrong. The stats from I think it was the 2023 survey,
Right.
was that 8% of, now this was central London office space, 8% fails band E.
Jesus, that is massive.
Gets worse. 50% fails band C, and given that band C, you had to be compliant by 2028.
Crazy.
So 50% of failing band B. The most shocking of all, but perhaps not necessarily that surprising, is that 80% fails band B.
2030.
Band B is only 5 years' time. 80% of the office.
Mental.
That's mad.
Mental.
So, and it's so mental, it's almost unbelievable. And I don't know what the reasoning behind the lack of enforcement has been. Probably because, well, I don't know, but it could be that they're just unachievable targets, and the economy can't support.
80%. There isn't enough resource available, to be able to actually
money.
The money,
In the landlord
the money,
world.
the landlords.
Yeah.
There isn't enough.
And to get from E to B, that's almost sort of knock it down and start again.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
So smart can play its part.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely, smart can play its part. And there's measures of smart, like Smart Score. I don't know if you're.
I do know Smart Score. Yeah.
Where they've got some interesting stats, but their stats are less about their stats have always been sort of landlord focused, were landlord focused, and their stats were that if you can achieve the requisite level of Smart Score, then you can charge up to 11% extra on your rent,
right?
Because of the efficiencies you're affording your tenants and the attractiveness to which your building now is. Now, I must confess, I think that's probably changed slightly, and I don't have the up to date stats on that.
Drag open a bit.
Yeah, but I'm sure we can, we can have a little look. But it's those numbers on
that's
that.
petrifying. There's our trailer got, by the way. Jesus.
Yeah. It is.
That's petrifying. I think it probably does segue into this, this next question quite well, actually. And the question is around what the next big leap is. We spoke a little bit about AI. You're talking to me here about a 2030 goal. In relation to smart buildings, what is the next big leap?
It's a
You're going to do this again, aren't you, John?
Really good question to ask. I think I probably actually don't know, is the honest answer. So I'm not going to try and make something up for you. But I am of the opinion that AI and what it can do with the data isn't being used to its full extent.
Yeah,
definitely. And therefore the feedback loop back into the building is not being necessarily maximized. But I would argue that's an incremental change, really, because the tool is there. It's just about making better
utilization.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of the next big, don't know is the honest answer. And we've got all the tools available to us. In terms of if a user, you can spot trends with users, and then the building can react to that trend, and then measure whether the user's going to positively enforce the fact they're going to be. They always come in on a Wednesday, Thursday, and a Friday. In that case, we can tailor the building, and we can preemptively book that desk for them, and so you can start to sort of preemptively make decisions based on previous behaviour, and then reinforce that, confirm it by the user actually booking that desk or whatever.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I honestly, mate, I don't.
Yeah, no,
it's a really good question.
It's not a quick question. It's it's a conversation which is more for my own interests as well, really. And what is next? We're always trying to stay on the upward curve of technology, and technology advances so quickly, especially with things like AI now. And people can create an app in 10 minutes by just some prompts. So it's the question isn't a trick question. It's more a case of, what don't I know? Do you know what I mean?
I think one thing I can see occurring, which is less really about smart, although it will impact smart, it's more behavioural. And I sort of have my smug face on at this point, because I predicted out the back of early 2021, avoiding the C word, that we had a status where employers were reluctant to enforce return to office, and the reasoning behind that, I predicted at the time, was because there were more jobs than there were people, and they were so reluctant. They didn't want to lose the workforce.
Yeah.
Well, and like I say, I predicted the fact that when that balance changes and there are then more people than there are jobs, which has absolutely happened,
Yeah.
the employers will then feel empowered to enforce people back to the office.
Spenno said
which
exactly the same.
Absolutely has happened, right?
We said exactly the same.
Yeah. So that will flip the other way again. Absolutely.
Well, that's what business is. You know, if you look at FTSE 500 or all of these, you know, these charts, it's whilst it's an upward trend, it's up and down, up and down, up. And when you zoom in on the micro, and there's no difference between job unemployment levels versus, you know, the demand for more staff. Like if you zoom out on a 30-year period, there's a certain trend. If you zoom in over 2 years, it's going one way or the other. So,
but I learned some facts the other day. This is completely off tangent, right? You can make use of this if you want to. You can bin it if you don't want to. But this is fascinating. And the impact of this, I don't know what it would be. I don't have the depth of either brain power or experience to be able to predict this. And this was about. It's quite off piste here. This was about the population of China.
Right.
So, but given the size of the population of China, this is going to impact the whole world. Right?
Yeah.
So currently, the population of China is about 3 billion.
Right.
The Chinese have, and I might be peddling, you know, something off the internet that isn't true, but well, you know, we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Over the last 5 years, they've been doing a population census to more accurately measure their population. They were out by 100 million people, which is a huge number, right?
Well, UK 60, isn't it? So.
But it's only 5% of their overall 3 billion, right? Because of their, as I understand it, the one-child policy.
Yes.
That they had, which we all know about. And they stopped the one-child policy. Now, I think it was 2015.
Right.
Might need to double-check that one.
Right.
The impact of that means that by 2030, there will be more retired people than there are workers in China.
Yeah.
And this is the scary bit.
Yeah.
By 2050, and according to this gentleman on the internet, this is now irreversible. By 2050, the population will have reduced to, now I think he said, around 550, 600 million.
From 3 billion?
3 billion.
Oh my goodness me.
And he was of the opinion, this is irreversible.
Well, that's Apple, isn't it? That's Apple screwed.
But exactly. So what's the impact of that going to be?
Massive. All of it. We manufacture everything.
All the manufacturing that goes on out there, the demand for things, you know, if there's nobody there to buy stuff, who's going to make the stuff? You know, it's just so cyclical. But I use that, you know, whilst it's off-piste, it is related.
Yeah.
That's going to impact.
Speak to Tim Cook. He needs to move his manufacturing over to India or something.
Well,
I think he did, to be fair.
What does that mean for us? What does that mean for office space? What does that mean? And that's only 25 years away.
That's scary, isn't it?
So what will I be? 75, 76?
My kids will be 26, 27.
I mean, I'll have stopped giving a toss a long time. But the kids, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 27, right in the middle of probably still going, Dad, can I have a fiver, please?
Mine will be in their 50s.
We're going to get away from this subject. I don't want to make you feel too bad. Look, we need to start rounding up, John. Do you know when we started recording, I said these things can go on and on because quite often I find that I'm finding the conversation so... I'm enjoying it so much that we just keep talking, and then I look up and I go, "Oh shit, we need to start rounding."
I have no idea how long we've been sitting here chatting. It's been a pleasure.
Talk to me. Let's start summarising some of this conversation. What if a client needs to speak to Chromers? Why would they want to talk to you?
Because they have to know the whys. They have to know the fundamentals of why they think they want a smart building. And we see specifications being issued to construction firms, you know, stage 3s, maybe even a stage 4, where it says, not really sure why we want a smart building, you can work it out. Now, clearly that's paraphrasing, that's not quite what the spec says, but fundamentally that's what it says. Yeah. Because it's included as a line item along with mechanical and electrical and public health, but nobody knows why.
Does it fall within sustainability as well?
Fundamentally it does, yeah. Well, I would argue it's kind of round the other way. Sustainability forms a part of it.
But if you're talking about these bands, 50%, band C and 80% are not going to be ready before 2030.
And if you are able to say, I've got 4 floors, but one of those floors we turn off for 6 months of the year on average, that has to produce a significant saving. Now, that's a saving. Whether that is then viewed as an efficiency That's the people who
Yeah.
look at the numbers and decide what's okay and what isn't. That
Yeah.
necessarily for me to say, but you can certainly, outside of that example, smart absolutely plays into the
Understood.
efficiency of a building.
Understood.
But why, mate? Why? Yeah,
That's the theme.
Yeah.
The underlying question of this podcast is, if you've got an office move over the next 12 to 18 months and you don't know what you don't know, what questions should you be asking yourself?
What is Chroma's telephone number?
I was going to ask you. You keep stealing my lines. That was going to be next.
Sorry. Well, it is 0208 1333327, in case you wanted to know. Yeah.
Look, John, I've just said a minute ago, mate, this is, I've enjoyed this. And I feel like I probably could go on for another hour and a half, but unfortunately I can't. And there's work to do.
There is, I'm afraid. Thanks for being an excellent host.
I've enjoyed it. And thank you for coming and sharing some knowledge bombs with us. And I think to round up, how can people get hold of you? You just kind of tongue-in-cheek mentioned your number, but if someone wants to get hold of you, how can they get hold of you?
Well, I'd imagine if I do this, just click the link up there. Some point or other, some magician will place a link up there.
He'll sort it out for you.
To click. But yeah, our website, chromas.co.uk. We're all on LinkedIn. It's KROMERS. I don't believe there's another company with a name quite like it. I've got some strange story I'll tell you about. I can't even begin to tell you this story right now, so therefore we'll move on. But about how aquaculture got used in the wrong way, and we kept getting content by people who bought certain products. Yeah, which is an eyebrow raising.
Maybe we stop recording. You tell me that story.
Exactly. No, I will. But yeah, chromas.co.uk 0208 133 3327. I feel like I'm touting for charity donations. Dishing out phone numbers like that, and and we'll be happy to help.
Brilliant, John. Thank you.
Nice one.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Great. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I certainly enjoyed having that guest on. Now, in order for us to close this podcast out, what I want to do is just highlight to you that we're an AV company. That's pretty clear. But what we do with a lot of our clients is we offer them showroom visits, basically. So we quite often go around a lot of the showrooms that are available to us. We're doing a big LED showroom visit. So if you want to come and see some of the latest LED technology that you can deploy within your meeting room, we're doing a big LED showroom visit over the coming weeks. The date's not fully confirmed yet, but we have put together a wait list. The link to that wait list is in the description below. If you're interested in coming along and seeing the latest LED and what you can deploy within your office space and the art of the possible when it comes to LED, click the link below, join the wait list. When we've got the date confirmed for our showroom visit, we'll then invite you to that showroom. We'll show you what the art of the possible is. For now, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell so that you see the next one as well.